call our June 19th, 2023 meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome Pastor Paul Andrews from Freedom Church to the podium, and he'll open us with prayer or whatever.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Father, I thank you for this day. This is the day that you have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for purpose today, Lord, that you give us purpose. And I pray for these servants who are leading our community. I pray that you would give them a sense of purpose, a sense of your hand upon them. Give them wisdom to move our community forward. This is a difficult and a very challenging and a polarizing time to lead, Lord. And I just pray that you would give them calmness, peace, strength of character, and just the ability to see through the emotions and everything else that can come with important decisions, and to make the best decisions for this community, Lord. Help them to grow as people. Help them to grow as leaders close to you, Lord. And I thank you that they move Augusta forward. And we truly believe, Lord, the best is yet to come. We give you praise for that, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Let's go down and review our minutes from the council meeting of June 5th and June 12th work session.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 5th, 2023 City Council meeting and the June 12th, 2023 City Council work session.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any other questions about it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moves us down to our appropriation ordinance number 6.
Josh, I have a question. Is the $462,825 to McCullough excavation, is that just for the lakeside lift station only? Or do you know for sure?
I'm going to guess so. I don't know if the bills are split out that cleanly, but if you look kind of at the billing dates, it would mainly be for the work done through that lift station.
And that's the first time we've made a payment to them, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
and we would have had earlier payments, but in this case, I think Schwab was a little late getting some stuff to us on those, which is why you're seeing them kind of stacked up like that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve first appropriation ordinance number 6 dated June 7th, 2023.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve this ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. This time I'd look around and call for any other visitors that are here that aren't on the agenda, but I see none. So that moves us to our first item of business, the subordination agreement with Southwestern Bell doing business as AT&T Kansas. Staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item and most of the items you're going to see on the agenda tonight are related to our municipal airport runway project. As you recall, at a prior meeting, you authorized a subordination agreement with the Rural Water District for utilities that they had within the right-of-way of the section of 110th Street that we were closing as part of our runway extension. And AT&T Southwestern Bell is the other utility that is located within that easement. And so we've been working with them to prepare a separate subordination agreement. We went back and forth a couple more times on the language there, but ultimately they agreed to what the city had drafted, and FAA has reviewed it as well. And we're comfortable moving forward. So just as a reminder, subordination agreement is basically due to the fact that their utility is located under an important piece of infrastructure, the runway that is federally funded, and the federal government wants to make sure that the city is protecting that infrastructure. And so what they do is they ask cities to get subordination agreements with any of this stuff underground that says if you're going to do any work, you have to make sure that that is fully coordinated and approved by the city before you go out there, because we have planes landing. It's a safety feature. So that's the nature of subordination, to make sure we have those rights. With that, I'll turn it over to council for consideration of the subordination agreement.
Josh, does this have any kind of a termination time, or is it just forever, ever?
Yes. Yes to the second part. It's subordinate, I guess, as long as their infrastructure is there. So I don't recall drafting any kind of date in these. It's just as long as their infrastructure there, it's subordinate.
Thank you.
I move for approval of subordination agreement with Southwestern Bell Telephone Company, DBA AT&T Kansas.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve this agreement. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to item number 2, easement acquisition for municipal airport project. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item also related to the airport project, but a little bit different. Has to do with the closure of the roadway itself and its impact on the surrounding properties. Early on in the process, when we were working with Butler County on this road closure, one of the things we talked about is what state do you leave the roadways in once the section has been removed? And so one of the requirements that Butler County had was that on the eastern side of the runway, their zoning regulations, or whatever you want to call it, their regulations require that the road have an offset cul-de-sac on it. So that cul-de-sac provides enough space for turning movements, for emergency vehicles, for folks that have reached essentially the end of the dead end road to be able to maneuver and turn back around. And looking at the possible locations for that, the option of putting it on airport property, we did not feel was a very good option. And for various reasons, topography and just distance away from the homes. And so that caused us to start looking at adjoining property where they actually have private property owners by the roadway. And so we reached out to the adjoining property owner. Mr. Kiter explained the project and had our consultant, Olson, prepare a legal survey, legal description showing the amount of property that would have to be acquired in order to construct that cul-de-sac. And it was, I believe, roughly around 1/3 of an acre. And so when we spoke with Mr. Kiter, he threw out a price that we thought was reasonable and didn't see any reason to delay the project in order to acquire that land. So we started working with Butler County. And so the process that we have laid out is what you would be approving tonight is a purchase agreement for the city to pay that $6,000 to acquire the easement, but rather than the city formally acquiring it and then having to do extra steps to transfer it to Butler County, the easement itself is drafted just to go straight to Butler County. So they're the ones that will have to vote on receiving the easement. But what you're approving tonight is a purchase agreement where the city is agreeing to pay the price. And so by doing that, we thought we saved some other money and steps of having to make a couple of different moves to make that transaction happen. So with that, I will turn it over to council. And while you're discussing, I'll pull up the map so you can kind of see the general location of where that easement will be. Questions, Mayor and Council?
I move for approval and acceptance of right-of-way easement purchase agreement with Gregory Kiter in the amount of $6,000 for easement to construct a cul-de-sac on 110th Street pursuant to requirements from Butler County.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That moves us down to the bid award for runway reconstruction project at Augusta Municipal Airport. So staff.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we do have our airport consultant, Brian Coombs from Olson here tonight, so we'll go ahead and have him come up to the podium. And so this is the big ticket item. We've been working towards this for 15, 16 years now. And we recently accepted bids for the construction project, and I will turn it over to Brian to talk through those bids, but I just want to highlight that there is a two-step action item. It's the first step to actually accept the bid awards. The second is to authorize staff and the city attorney to work through and sign all of the subsequent documentation in order to get the FAA grant application going for us to get reimbursed for this. And so you have an extra attachment that we received after the packet went out on Thursday. And that's just kind of a pricing overview of the expected costs on the project. We are currently going through an independent fee review of the engineers' construction administration agreement. The independent fee review will verify that their pricing is fair. And once that's done, you have the two pieces necessary to really finalize that grant application. So that won't be coming to you until the next city council meeting on June 3rd. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Brian to talk about the bids. And then Brian, if you want to mind, maybe just kind of walk us through the grant process, what happens from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor and Councilman. So as Josh mentioned, my name is Brian Coombs, and I'm an engineer and project manager with Olson, and have been to visit you, a few times over the past few years as we've been working towards this project. I know many of you have been working on it much before that as well. So as a copy of our evaluation of bids and recommendation to award letter is attached, we did receive open bids on June 8th here at City Hall, and we're thankful to receive 5 total bids and in my opinion, 5 competitive bids. Our engineer's estimate was nearly 10.3 million, which included a base bid for all the runway project. And then you'll see that there's an alternate bid number 1 included on the bid schedule. And that is the cost. We wanted to quantify that as a separate cost. That's the cost to construct this cul-de-sac on the easement that you just approved. So that alternate 1 includes cost to construct a gravel turnaround. So 5 bidders, all from the state of Kansas, exception of Emery, with the exception of Emery Sapp and Sons out of Kansas City, Missouri. The low bidder was Donlinger and Sons Construction of Augusta, Kansas.
Wichita.
I'm sorry, Wichita, Kansas. Absolutely, yes. Grand total bid $6,809,032.70. So after the bid, we came through and we verified the math on all of their bid, that they summed their totals correctly. All bid values did check out. There's a detailed analysis here in the letter. So we checked to meet that they were considered a responsive bid by meeting all the federal requirements, in which they did as well. They did submit some supplemental qualifications, and Donlinger was pre-qualified to the KDOT level of certification that we required for all concrete pavement. They are using a list of subcontractors, which is included in their bid proposal as well, the tentative list of subcontractors. Their paving subcontractor that they're planning to utilize does have recent experience of several concrete airport runways and taxiways in the state of Kansas over the past several years as well. So we do feel that they are qualified to complete the work, and that the price is considered fair and reasonable, and we would recommend full award of the contract, including the base bid and the alternate bid, to Donlinger and Sons Construction of Wichita, Kansas, pending FAA concurrence and successful receipt of the grant that we'll talk about here in a second. So as Josh mentioned, I'll walk through the grant process, but before I step into that, are there any questions regarding the bid or the bid results?
The last line there, the engineer's estimate, who is that?
That's me.
You? Okay.
Yes. So as we had worked through the design process, particularly last year through the spring of 2022, we saw a tremendous rapid amount of inflation. I'm sure you experienced it on other projects. So we had progressively adjusted our estimate over the design period to count for some of that inflation. And so these numbers that we received here are really tremendous considering the economic environment that we've been in. It's definitely an attractive project for contractors in the area. It was an attractive project, and they got competitive accordingly.
Numbers are just quite a bit different from yours, the, estimates coming in.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
You want to?
Has Donlinger done a runway project before?
They have airport experience in the Wichita area as well. They've done they recently did a big parallel taxiway project at the Newton Airport. So they're familiar with the FAA paving specification, as well as, the earthwork and the subgrade and aggregate requirements.
Did you have a good experience with them on that?
I haven't personally worked with them on those projects, so I can't speak to that as far as Olson's work with them.
They did our levee project.
Well, Wildcat was Wildcat Construction was the levee project. Now, Donlinger has done work in town before. We've used them on a lot of utilities. They did utility work on South Ohio. They're a big.
Well, they were one of Wildcat's subs.
They probably were. I mean, they do a ton of work in this area. They're a big reputable vendor.
Council, you want to accept that bid?
Okay. So my suggestion is let Brian kind of explain the grant process as well, and then you can just approve the items in sequence.
Okay.
I'll move on to the grant process then. So if you recall, it's been a couple of years since we've accepted an FAA grant. It can seem a little backwards that we're at this point in the process and now talking about submitting a grant application. The way that the FAA world works is that we work with them. We start the planning process for a grant application on a normal project 2 years in advance. And on this project, we've been working on it 3-4 years in advance of these budget numbers. So the project gets programmed in the FAA's capital improvement plan. They program the money in their system. They ask that the grant be written for the actual bid price and our actual engineering services price. So sometimes you may receive a grant based on a preliminary project best estimate, and that's announced. So I cover that just so that you can rest assured that these funds have been programmed in the FAA system. This is the normal process. So stepping back, 2 years ago, you accepted grants for our design and bidding services and for the reimbursable agreement with the FAA Technical Operations Division. Those hit during the COVID funding relief years of 2021. So both of those grants were 100% funded. Those COVID relief periods have ended. So now we're back to the traditional FAA grant funding cycle, which is a 90-10 split. So it's anticipated, or you will receive, if you proceed with the grant, will receive 90% reimbursement for all eligible costs associated with this project, including construction and then our construction phase services combined into one. So we would prepare the grant application on your behalf. City manager would sign and send the grant application into the FAA, and then they return with a formal grant offer for that amount that we would then, the city manager and the city attorney would then sign and accept. And at that point, we have fully accepted the grant. The money is essentially available and encumbered in the FAA system, and we submit those 90% drawdowns as we go along. This project, since it's such a large project in the region, this is one of the most notable projects throughout the entire state for this year. You are receiving what's called FAA discretionary funds. So typically, a general aviation airport of your size receives $150,000 of federal funds per year. Can bank those up for a period of 4 years, and then exercise a 90-10 grant to receive those. This project is obviously much in excess of that, so the FAA programmed what they call discretionary funds to complete the project. So those are additional funds that can be used at the FAA's discretion for high priority projects throughout the United States and throughout the region. So again, they're bringing, close to $7 million of additional federal discretionary funds to this project to be utilized in it, as compared to what you would typically receive through just your standard entitlement. And as Josh mentioned, there is a preliminary, the numbers may shift slightly, but there is a preliminary estimate included that would show your projected local match in the federal funds as well for that project. So you will see that there is a little bit of ineligible cost. And so Josh referenced the waterline agreement and that you had approved at a previous meeting. There is a portion of the water line because of the local utilities' desire to upsize, from the 8 to the 12. The FAA said, well, we won't pay for the upgrade. We'll just pay for the base cost. So this ineligible cost that you see here is 100% funded with local funds. And that's the delta to cover the upgrade from the 8-inch line that exists today to the 12-inch line that we'll construct. So again, key point is that the grant will cover 90% of all eligible costs on the project. And then, the city covers 100% of the ineligible costs.
And Brian, how did we end up resolving the cul-de-sac issue? Is that 100% local, or is FAA going to help us cover the construction of the cul-de-sac?
Initially, we thought that the cul-de-sac was going to be ineligible, complete local costs. The FAA told us unexpectedly kind of that they would consider that an eligible expense. So as we sit, we're holding our breath and hoping to get that across the finish line, that's how it finalizes as we go through this grant application process. But right now, as it sits, the cost associated with construction of that cul-de-sac is considered an eligible expense and up for 90% reimbursement. Easements are a little trickier if you procure an easement locally. I'm expecting that cost of the easement will be a total ineligible expense.
And we proceeded on that kind of as expecting that to just be a local issue, because the process of having to select and do all that would have delayed the project more than we wanted to. So we just decided to accept that cost on the easement.
Right. But as it sits right now, the most current information we have is that the cost of constructing the turnaround construction costs is an eligible expense as well. And that's reflected in that cost summary.
Brian, somewhere in the contract, I think it says 200 working days.
Mhm.
Is that for both phases together?
Yep.
Okay.
So if we move forward with award, we had a condition in the bid that we would issue a notice to proceed no later than October 1st for earthwork to begin this fall. There are a total of 65 working days allowed this fall to complete a majority of the earthwork that does not impact the runway pavement and the runway lighting system. So we're allowing 45 days for them to do earthwork in the zones that allow the runway to remain open. And then they're allowed an additional 20 days this fall where the runway will be closed for approximately a 1-month period while they do earthwork within the runway safety area and approach. We'll then reopen the runway over the winter and would allow operations to continue until sometime next spring, pending weather, March, April, at which point the full runway closure would commence. And then they'd have 135 working days to remove the existing runway, perform the remainder of the grading and utilities, and pave the new runway, lighting, et cetera. Good question.
So that's written into the contract as far as, was that part of the bid as how long it would take to do it?
Yeah, we have, so we prepare, it's in both of our plan set and then our separate project manual that's consists of the construction contract that you sign with the contractor and the project specifications, et cetera. So we lay out that there's those 200 working days allowed in those specific timeframes. And then there's liquidated damages associated if they use more than that as well. I don't apologize, I don't have that number handy, but it's pretty significant. I want to say it was close to $4,000 per day of liquidated damages if they exceed that time frame.
So did each bidder, as part of their bid, submit how many days they think they could do it in?
So that's a different type of bidding. We say you're given 200 days, hit it or else pay these damages. So we don't ask them to submit a schedule. By submitting a bid, they are essentially agreeing or
Okay.
going under contract that they will complete it within that time frame or pay these damages. So no guarantee that they won't exceed it and be subject to the damages, but I asked pretty specifically for feedback on that exact item, if people were concerned about this allowable schedule days, et cetera. And I didn't receive any concerns, during the bid process. Everybody thought that was about, or the feedback that I got seems to be that people thought that was the appropriate amount of time. So it's, and along those lines, I'll mention too, we advertised the project for a period of almost 6 weeks because we knew it was a big project. We knew it generated a lot of interest. So we did host a pre-bid meeting at the airport where we invited all the contractors to come during the advertisement period, ask questions, and we raised a lot of issues exactly like that intentionally to try and head any of those off, before we got to this point. So
Another thing, Brian, that has been brought up in past times that you said we have averted not to do is we do not have to bring any dirt in off-site. We have all the dirt we need on site.
yes, that's a great point. So that was we went into design fully anticipating that we'd have to haul significant volume of earth material from off-site sources. But we didn't have a source identified, so the initial plan was that we were going to have to ask a contractor to find their own source and furnish that to us. So we got to nearly the 90% design phase, and we realized that we felt we could balance the earthwork on site. So we actually went out and performed a lot of additional borings to check for shale depth, for bedrock depth, to confirm that we could generate that material on site, and we were able to do that. And so the project moves approximately 240,000 cubic yards of material, which is a very large earthwork project. And all of that can be satisfied from both existing airport property and a significant amount from the southern end of the property. If you recall, a component of the project is to construct some stormwater detention controls on the property that we purchased to the south. So we're constructing a fairly significant stormwater detention basin, which will be normally dry. It won't hold water. It won't be a standing water pond, but it will fill up during large rain events and then empty out within a period of 48 hours so it doesn't attract birds and wildlife off the end of the runway. But we're able to incorporate that into design. That helped also generate more earthwork volume that we were needed to construct the project on site. So some added benefit, all that was able to.
And we submitted that stormwater plan to the Butler County engineer, and they were satisfied with the proposed solution to that.
I move for approval of the airport consultant's recommendation to award the runway reconstruction project to the low bidder, Donlinger Construction, the amount of $6,809,032.70 for the base bid and alternate bid number 1 for the airport runway 18/36 project, contingent on final approval by the FFA and FAA grant funding.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve this bid award. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I also move for approval of submittal of FAA grant application for the project and authorize city manager and city attorney to execute all subsequent documentation related to the grant.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve this grant application. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'm very excited to be here and happy to be a part of this project.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Item 4, Federal Aid Fund Exchange Master Agreement. Josh?
Yes, Mayor and Council. So this item has quite a bit of history, and so I'm just going to explain it as best I can. So you had a unique situation when we first entered into the Federal Fund Exchange Program back in that 2009. That's about right, 2009 timeframe. There was previously a 5-year state plan that the city's South Ohio project was programmed into, and then they ended up canceling that plan. And so the state came to us with this proposal to front us of $1.5 million and then said, hey, here's this federal fund exchange program that we're starting up, and we can convert this project to that. Well, as one of the earliest, from my recollection, as one of the earliest entrants into that program, that was done kind of as a standalone special one-off type agreement. And since that was such a large project, the state has been collecting our annual allocation since that time, 2011, 12, whenever the project was actually constructed and we had to pay for it. So we haven't been receiving any of that federal money for 13 years. And because of that, we haven't had to submit any annual documentation to KDOT in order to do the regular fund exchange process. And I guess that the requirement that they have in the program is that each of those individual requests for funding are subject to the terms and conditions in the master agreement that you have signed. So if you recall at a prior meeting, the city had some leftover funds now that the South Ohio project is paid off, and you approved that couple of $1,000s to be applied towards another project. But it was actually noted in that staff report that we would probably have another agreement coming. KDOT told us, go ahead and approve this, but we'll send you a master agreement later that you need to execute. So this is that master agreement. So each year when the federal government has those allocations, you will still have to do the annual submittal to say, hey, we want to use this funding towards this project. Please do the exchange. But then that exchange itself will be governed by this master agreement. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for any questions you may have.
Josh, when they contact us to renew this, at that time, will they be telling us how much we're going to get, or does that come later?
So I have never seen it earlier than February of each year. And I don't know if they know it any earlier than that, because I think it's subject to annual federal allotment in the budget. And so we typically just wait and see what happens. And so I've given you the historical numbers that we've received, and those kind of spiked up during COVID. I think they've returned to a more normal level in the 125, 130,000 a year range. So this year we had about 3,000 left over after the final payment on South Ohio was made. So I would expect going forward to get something in the range of 125,000. Can go up, can go down, and ultimately, if the federal government chooses not to allot it in the budget, it could go away. But it's, as far as I know, that annual allotment has existed for many, many decades. So I don't anticipate that, but just understand that is a potentiality.
I move for approval of the Federal Aid Fund Exchange Master Agreement between the Secretary of Transportation of Kansas Department of Transportation and the City of Augusta, and authorize Mayor Rawlings to sign the agreement.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second to authorize this agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. We'll move down to matters from and for council. So Josh, I believe you've got something here.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'd like us to look at our next date for work session. So the next off Monday is June 26th. If you can fit that into your schedule, I'd like to schedule our next budget meeting. And then, as I previously indicated to council, I had an expectation that our local economic development group, API, would have a request or a presentation to make. And when we had, there was some discussion that happened at our last meeting when Go Augusta showed up. So I wanted to make sure that you're fully aware and have signed off on anyone else attending the meeting before that happens. So if you're good on that date, I'd like you to formally schedule that so we can send out our public notices.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to schedule budget work session number 3 for Monday, June 26th, including presentation from API regarding economic development at 6:00 PM here at City Hall.
Second it.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Burke, do you have anything tonight?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rivas?
I got one quick request is I got a couple phone calls since we've changed to the live streaming. People seem to be kind of confused about how to tune in to listen or to watch. I've my technology knowledge is not too good to explain to people. So I went on the website to try to see if I could navigate to find them. And I see a link to watch the video, but since there's not a live meeting, I don't know if that link that's on the website, if you click on that live meeting, if that takes you to the live meeting, because it takes you to the video library.
It takes you to a library because the live meeting won't show up until it's actually broadcasting. So there's not even a placeholder for it until it's actually broadcasting.
And then there was information put out to be sure to join our YouTube channel. And both of the people I talked to had no idea how to do that. Is there any kind of information we can provide to people through social media, through utility bills, as far as specific instructions on how to take advantage of this new?
We'll work something up.
Because it is a good deal, but people just don't seem to be able to get to the live part of it.
While we're talking about that, has anyone had any more feedback on the second meeting regarding audio issues or anything?
Positive.
Good.
Okay.
That's all I got, Mayor.
Did you have something else you needed?
No, I was just gonna suggest before you do the executive session component that since we didn't have that in the original agenda, maybe do some kind of formal action to add that item to the agenda once you're done with your info memo and comments.
Copy that. Mr. Richardson, you got anything tonight?
Yeah, Mr. Shaw, I brought up last meeting about the electrical at the splash pad, and I just want to thank you for working with the contractor, got that taken care of the next day, so
Yeah, those
thank you
contractors,
very
man,
much.
they're tough sometimes, but we hold their feet to the fire.
That's not been too hot that day.
Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I think I know, but the sirens, tornado sirens, they work during a power outage. They're battery backed up, right? Okay. So- Okay. So this weekend, it was just because there was no immediate threat of the tornadoes around us, or?
Correct, that was not set up. We didn't have high enough winds for it. We felt we got people scattered everywhere. And we didn't have any rotation out from near town.
All right, that's,
Or high enough winds.
I just wanted to make sure I was telling people correctly.
And since you brought it up, Councilman, that is actually one of the projects that's listed for consideration in that bond discussion that we're having is updating those various sirens. We took our chances on a grant application to FEMA earlier this year and we're not successful. But we do think that they are in need of some rehab and update. And so that is something that we definitely want to pay attention to and try to get them updated as soon as we can.
Tom?
Nothing.
Jeff?
The only thing in front of Dollar General, I don't know if anybody's mowed that all year, but I don't know if we can send a letter or something, but it's got to be almost waist high. I mean, it's really rough.
Over on Ohio Street?
That's all I had.
Mike?
Don't have anything.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to add an executive session to the end of our agenda tonight to discuss potential legal liability between the public body and an agency.
Got a motion in several seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to move into executive session for 15 minutes, to discuss issue related to potential legal liability related to performance of a contract pursuant to the consultation with an attorney for the public body or agency, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Justification for executive sessions under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, KSA 75-4319B2, and to invite in City Manager Josh Shaw and City Attorney Andrew Marino. The open meeting will resume in City Council chambers at 7:57 PM.
Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.